Hello, and welcome to Thingamajigs, the exciting history of mundane things. I am Ben.
And I am Danielle.
And I don't know what we're talking about today.
We're talking about couches.
I just woke up at this 7:21 p.m.
Were you on a couch?
Yes.
Seems like you weren't.
For the sake of this episode, yes, I was on a couch. And as I was there, I dreamt of many couches and many various seating surfaces, and my mind wandered through history. And
where is this going?
Danielle is going to tell you what I saw.
Isn't there an episode of Rick and Morty where one of the worlds is couches?
Yeah, I think there was one with chairs.
Oh, it's chairs. Not the same thing.
Is that so? What is it that separates a couch from a chair? Do we have historical documentation for this?
Mostly the length, and as time goes on, the padding.
Now, what is a love seat? Is it a chair or is it a couch?
We'll get there.
Okay.
So I usually use the word couch, but apparently sofa is the more universal term. I doubt we have listeners outside of the US, but in case we do, I shall use the word sofa to refer to the usually long, comfy, padded thing that sits in our living rooms.
I switch between them.
Your mom says sofa. I don't think anybody in my family usually says sofa.
I say whichever comes more naturally in the context.
Sofa in my mouth feels more like soap.
I don't like couch. It just sounds like a dirty word. Sofa sounds more pleasant.
Sofa does sound softer. I mean, here in the US, the most universal term is couch, but they're also called settees. We don't use that word. Lounger, Davenport, Chesterfield are all also words for sofa. But sofa, couch, and settee are the three most common among English speakers. So sofas are pretty old, but they have evolved a lot over the millennia that they've been around. Ancient Egyptians and Greeks did have sofas, but they were mostly just ornate wooden benches. The word sofa is actually derived from the Arabic word sufa, which meant long bench. I'm not surprised that their sofas were just wooden benches since their beds were not incredibly comfortable. Could you imagine if their sofas were more comfortable than their mattresses?
Were the sofas also suspended from the ceiling?
No.
Bummer.
They had legs. But the sofa was more for like perching on than lounging like we do today. If you were poor, you probably had more of a stone bench to sit on. I imagine that was very heavy and a pain to move around. It's hard enough to find people to help you move. Imagine if your sofa was made of stone.
Yeah, there's always that one friend that always calls whenever they're moving. And it's like the only time you see them is when you're carrying their sofa down some stairs.
If you are the one person in the friend group that owns a truck, by purchasing that truck, you have committed yourself to helping your friends move and carry Christmas trees.
It's a blessing and a curse.
To own a truck?
Yeah. Suddenly make a lot of friends, but not for the best of reasons.
Your friends are only, I guess you could call them truck friends, like fair weather friends. They're only your friends because you have a truck.
It's even worse if you get a trailer.
We really need a friend with a forklift. If you own a forklift and you want to be our friend, that is the only requirement currently.
We are now accepting applications.
If you were wealthy or a royalty, you would probably have an upholstered wooden bench. You'd have to be wealthy enough to afford the wood and the fabric. I should note that these benches usually had some kind of armrest, but didn't usually have a back. That was too high tech. We hadn't figured out backings yet.
Why are we all slouching? I don't know.
Archaeologist Howard Carter in 1922 found King Tut's tomb, and can you believe there were some sofas in there? Gotta have somewhere to sit in the afterlife.
Well, yeah. Your legs will get tired after a few millennia.
Maybe in the afterlife, you bring your sofa, but if it doesn't have any padding on it, you just like get some clouds. Pad that sucker out with some clouds.
That sounds nice.
Instead of lazy boy, it can be called heavenly boy.
Except clouds are water, so your butt would get wet.
You'd be so moisturized.
You'd be damp. You'd be a soggy bottom boy.
When Rome fell, we also lost a lot of sofa innovation. They kind of disappeared for a while. People still had chairs and stuff, but the sofas of the ancient wealthy is what we lost. They don't come back until homes begin to get better weatherproofing. Homes becoming less dank is why the upholstery started. For a while, tapestries were on the walls to help insulate and soak the damp air. Ugh. But when houses became more waterproof, they started using those fabrics in other ways. And covering their sofas was one of them.
That makes sense. I guess if your house was just damp and dank all the time, you'd probably want a stone couch.
Yeah, no one wants to sit on a soggy sofa. They could have really used a dehumidifier or some damp rid. Speaking of which, we need to get some damp rid now that we're back in the soggy state of Louisiana. The humidity here is wild.
My bed's always wet, and I'm never sure why. Could be one thing, could be another, you know?
It's amazing how much I can feel the moisture in everything, like sheets and stuff. I didn't used to feel all of the wetness around me. I'm going to be glad when I go back to damp blindness.
Wetness is an unpleasant word, I've just learned. Yeah, there are only 4 reasons your bed should ever be wet, and the air is not one of them.
Are you going to share the list of 4 reasons of why?
Not in this podcast.
Oh, okay. We lost so much between ancient times and the Renaissance. It's truly sad. Who knows where we would be if we hadn't gone through that dark age. For the most part, beds were in the main rooms because that's where the fire was and that's where it was warm. So people sat on beds and there would usually be some wooden hard chairs. They just didn't really see a need for sofas. But don't worry, the Renaissance is coming, and with it, the rebirth, badoosh, of sofas. Renaissance means rebirth.
Oh, does it? Very good. Good badoosh.
Thank you. So the 1500s through 1650s was called the Oak Period. Normal people were still not incredibly worried with furniture. Houses barely had furniture, but long benches were made with oak trees. It was a good, strong option that didn't easily warp. By the 1620s, they're becoming more popular, and they have high backs. We have backs now, by the way.
We can all stop slouching.
Well, I don't think that was really a factor. I mean, people were, when you perch on it, you don't really, you sit up when you perch.
How do you mean perch?
Well, you know, like...
Show me a perch. No, if you sit like that long enough, you look very fancy perching, though. That's a 10 out of 10 perch.
If you... I guess... People worked a lot, okay? I don't think they had a lot of time to sit around, but I guess if you were wealthy enough to own a couch, you were probably taught how not to slouch.
Probably. We're very careful not to slouch. But if it were me...
You slouch while standing.
It's a hard life being a tall man in a short man's world.
Somehow, you slouch while laying down.
If I want to look at an ATM, I basically have to lie on the ground.
The world was made for short people. We're only getting bigger, though. You know, toilets have... The standard size of toilets has gotten bigger because people are getting bigger.
Yeah, man.
And I don't mean, like, wider. I mean, like, proportionally bigger, taller. We're just bigger Homo sapiens now.
It's all the hormones and crap we eat, man.
I think it has a lot to do with breeding.
It's not good. It's not good. There's no way that's it alone.
Oh, no.
I don't know what it is, but...
There's no way that's it alone. I'm just saying, like, the evolutionary process of choosing partners and procreating, passing your genes on, got to be part of it.
But the taller you are, the more problems you have. Earth's gravity is too strong to support tall things. That was something they talked about, like, what if Godzilla were real? He would just collapse under his own weight, because the taller things are in Earth's gravity, the weaker they are. It's not good for humanity.
Wasn't that a thing before the asteroid hit and killed all the dinosaurs? That's why everything was bigger, because the atmosphere was... Not that gravity has changed, but like the atmosphere has changed.
It's not entirely known for sure, but there are different theories about it. Whether it was just evolution or if it was atmospheric. But yeah, one of the theories is that the higher oxygen content helped them to expand.
So these high back benches, they were sometimes used to block doorways to help with drafts. Thought that was interesting. And some had little shelves on the back to stand a candle up.
Interesting.
Gradual improvements happened, like padding, which was usually horsehair or hay or moss. Kind of the same stuff that they were using to stuff their mattresses with.
Seashells, sand, and corn.
No, that was toilet paper.
They stuffed it with toilet paper? Now that's good thinking.
I'm sure if they had toilet paper, they would have. This surge in comfortable living took over. They discovered casual. This was such a new concept that there wasn't even really a word for it yet, because comfortable at the time meant capable of being consoled, comfortable. So let's keep in mind that our idea of casual and comfortable is very different, but by their standards and what they were used to, these couches were very comfortable in the new scene of the world. Maybe not comfortable by today's standards, but the French certainly thought that it was luxurious. There's a book called The Age of Comfort, When Paris Discovers Casual, written by Joan Dijon. And it talks about people beginning to read for pleasure, cotton fabrics becomes available, and the first casual dress. These people were letting loose, and luxurious sofas were on that list. Not everyone liked this, as you can imagine. With this new casual, comfortable idea taking over, the formality of life was coming undone. People at court were slouching on seats, draping themselves over sofas, like pulling their legs up under them while seated. Just the very idea. Now, this is very important because the hierarchy of court was visible by who got to sit and who had to stand, and all of this was getting thrown out the door with these comfortable sofas being introduced. The book talks about the king's sister-in-law sending 4 letters to her cousin complaining that, quote, protocol and etiquette were completely done away with. In the salon, anyone, even the lowliest officers, was stretched out full length on sofas. The very sight of it disgusted me. She was not pleased, if you can't tell.
The audacity of these people to not stand.
The sofa was seen as a sexy piece of furniture because women could lay on them, and a woman laying down is just a few seconds from carnal rage.
True.
There's no reason for a woman to lay down unless you were about to mount her. Ugh, I didn't like that. I felt it coming out of my mouth, and it just made me vomit a little bit.
Some words carry a bit of vomit when they come out.
This luxurious, comfortable time in France did not last forever, though, because the French saw the Americans. This is during the Revolutionary War, so they were fighting for their independence, and the French wanted some of that for themselves. And you have to remember, these luxuries were just for royalty, nobles, and people that lived at court. The rest of the country was, well, willing to start a French Revolution. The next big change for sofas was the Industrial Revolution. Well, I guess actually it was the invention of sewing machines because it made upholstery easier. But shortly after that, it was the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution is one of those things that I feel very torn on because it was the beginning of the global crisis, pollution, single-use demand, mass production, and all that. But it was also the birth of the middle class, which was normal people's saving grace. There was finally a place for people who weren't dirt poor but also couldn't afford everything being bespoke.
There's now in between living in a shack in your fields of mud and living in a castle.
Right. And for us who are not wealthy, but also not living in dirt shacks, I have to be somewhat thankful for the Industrial Revolution. But it came with a lot of downsides for our planet. Nonetheless, here it is, and everyone has access to sofas, or at least better access. The 1800s also saw Thomas Chippendale. He was a British furniture designer, and I thought I would add him because he is who the male strip club is named after. Really weird, but there you go. It was very fine furniture. 1850 saw coil springs, which drastically increased the comfort to these sofas. There's only so much padding can do. The invention of coil springs were huge in mattresses as well, if you remember.
I remember.
Do you remember conversation pits? Those are technically couches.
Yeah, I do. Those are awesome. Didn't I bring that up in an episode before? When you bring back conversation pits?
I think you did. They were highly scrutinized for safety issues. They were like, what if you have too much to drink and you fall down into the conversation pit? Or how are you supposed to stay focused on the conversation that you're having when you've got feet walking directly behind your head? I've only seen one conversation pit in real life. The lake house has a conversation pit, and you can tell that house is like 70s. I have some fun facts. You asked about the...
Is that it for the history?
Told you it'd be short.
You don't have anything past that?
No.
What about Tempur-Pedic? What about modular sofas? What about sofa beds? What about inflatable beds?
I was thinking about
sofas.
I was thinking about the inflatable sofas. Those were really big in the 90s.
What about the water sofa?
What?
Yeah, it's like a water bed, but it's a sofa.
I don't think that existed.
Oh, it existed.
I guess I'm not surprised.
Tell you what. Go and listen to the second half of mattresses and just pretend we're talking about couches and you'll probably get the idea. They pretty much tried all the same stuff.
I didn't get into modern couches, modern sofas.
Guess that's all right. Speaking of inflatable couches, I watched a video from the 50s, I think it was, where they were predicting the lifestyles of the future family, you know, the far-off distant world of 2000. And they were talking about how everybody's favorite furniture would all be inflatable, and they would just deflate it and bring it to their friend's house and air it back up so that they could always have their favorite chair with them. Stuff like that. I thought that was pretty funny. Because like back then, you'd just have your lazy boy that you lay in, and that's your chair, and nobody else messes with your chair. But you couldn't bring it anywhere else. But if it were inflatable...
Compact! I've slept on inflatable mattresses, and they are not as comfortable as real mattresses, so I cannot imagine that the inflatable furniture was nearly... I don't think you'd want to bring it with you. I think you'd see a nice comfy couch already. That was a good show, Comfy Couch, with the clowns.
You know, the sexy clown lady?
No, not sexy. Not sexy.
Sexy clown lady, yeah.
No.
It was called Sexy Clown Lady's Comfy Couch.
It was not, and it was for children. Anyway, I don't think that people would want to sit on their inflatable couches when there's a perfectly good regular couch. And all the time that it would take to blow that sucker up, it'd be time to leave by the time you finish blowing it up.
Correct, and that's why we don't do those things that they thought we would for some reason. I've sat on an inflatable sofa before, and it is only comfortable for a short window of time.
So love seats.
Yes, finally. Tell me, what's their deal?
They were originally designed for those big 17th century dresses. Not necessarily the love of two people. Like, women's skirts were just too big. But it didn't stop people from using the small space as an excuse to be closer together without the scrutiny of others.
Nice. So they're big so that they can fit the undercarriage, the chassis of their giant dresses.
Yeah, those big like metal hoop skirts. It's occurring to me that our kid will probably never know the rush of sticking their hands down the back of the couch and finding enough money to buy a snowball, because we never have or use cash in order for it to change to fall out of our pockets.
Snowball?
Yeah.
Most people don't know what that is. You're gonna have to explain.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a southern thing, I think.
Okay, well, it's
shaved ice.
Shaved ice with a flavored syrup.
French ice, isn't that a thing some people call it?
Maybe a snow cone is more universally
probably
in the vernacular of most people.
Yeah. Down here in the south, we've got snowball stands, is what they're called, and they give you a snowball, which is just shaved ice with a ton of flavored syrup and some condensed milk.
I was about to say, sometimes you can get them stuffed and they'll have like ice cream or something in the snowball.
Yeah, that's not a real snowball. That's
no,
for
it's
yuppies.
It's a fancy snowball.
That's a Yankee ball. Get out of here.
I think a Yankee ball is a baseball. I think we need to stop making pull-out couches. They're never comfortable. No one ever wants to sleep on the pull-out couch. If a mattress can fold, it should not be slept on.
I think that there are comfortable ones. I think they're just really rare because they're expensive. So no one wants to buy them, and since no one wants to buy them, no one wants to make them. So most companies don't make them.
Your parents have an interesting pull-out couch. Theirs pulls out, but it's a blow-up mattress that you deflate and it just goes back into the couch. It's a raised blow-up mattress, and I think that's a way better idea than those terrible, broken, Great Divide foldable mattresses.
Very retro-futuristic. The people in the 50s would have been very proud.
Also, the noises that blow-up furniture make when you're sitting on them is embarrassing.
You don't like rolling over in the middle of the night to go...
That was not sonically pleasing, I guarantee. And it isn't in person either. I have an update.
Oh?
We have now seen a total solar eclipse.
Oh, beep, 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 beep. Eclipse Watch 2024 coming in hot.
I completely understand now why ancient people considered it a bad omen. When you're standing there, it feels very ominous. It's incredibly weird. The whole thing is weird. There's this weird feeling of whenever it's happening, you feel very uncomfortable and not afraid because, like, you know what's going on. But the lizard part of your brain is telling you that you should be afraid. But then as soon as it's over, this anger comes over you that it's over and you can't ever go back. And it's not going to happen again in my region, at least for another 21 years. It's really weird. I highly suggest everyone to experience it. It's wild.
I didn't really expect it to get so dim outside before it happens. It was just something I never thought of, I guess. But as the sun is getting more and more covered by the moon, even though it's not an eclipse that you can see with your naked eye, you can see it steadily getting very dim outside, and it's pretty unsettling.
It is. It's really weird for the sky to be getting darker with the sun in the middle of the sky. So it almost feels like you're losing your vision in some kind of way.
It does kind of feel like you're going blind.
Yeah. But it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. It was remarkable.
It's very cool.
We're about to commit our lives to chasing these things. They're not that rare. They happen like every other year if you're willing to go and find them. There's going to be one in Egypt in 2027, and there's going to be one in Australia in 2028.
So going to be some good spots.
My brother told me that for the 2017 eclipse, they viewed it from the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, that's a good spot.
That's a really good spot. But yeah, I totally get it. It feels like a spiritual experience. It's very moving.
That concludes Eclipse Watch 2024. Thanks for staying tuned. And thank you for listening to this episode of Thingamajigs and another exciting history of a mundane thing. Another short one because we're still just getting settled in. Let us know what topics you want to hear next. If there's anything you're curious about, we'll tell you about the history of it. Don't forget to grab a goose and have a perch on the Chesterfield. Thanks for listening.